After several years of huge progress and many releases for Nihon Falcom, 2026 promises some more of the same, but also the sense of the end of a journey and the beginning of the next phase. There is the obvious journey that has now been completed with the release of Trails Beyond the Horizon, serving as the culmination of an over decade-and-a-half long quest to localize every single Trails game in the series. There is also the journey of the company, having completed its first full year since the death of founder Masayuki Kato. On top of that, the company is aiming to realize the ambitions of current President Toshihiro Kondo of releasing multiple games this year, with Kyoto Xanadu and Trails in the Sky Second Chapter both announced for this year. With rising sales abroad, declining sales in Japan, and conversations about AI use in games, there is a lot to cover. I'll talk more about the plans that we can discern thus far for this year for Falcom, and speculate about what that means for the future. But we'll start off with that first point following the release of Trails Beyond the Horizon. On January 15th, 2026, the English-speaking world finally caught up to Japan when it came to Trails releases. If you have watched this series of videos since its beginning, when I covered the reason for the long localization cycle for Nihon Falcom games, you understand why this is an incredible achievement. It took many people working for many companies across many years to accomplish. It is a project that, like all the most celebrated projects, had many moments when it seemed like it would never happen. In some ways, it feels anticlimactic for it to come to a close like this, with honestly little fanfare, but it's likely because there is always the knowledge that there is more on the horizon. The catch-up is done, but the journey continues, with now the West standing beside Japan as they head into the future of Trails. Until the Trails sub-series comes to a close, this is just another step forward, not the final step. That doesn't mean that we can't take a moment to acknowledge exactly how far the series has come from its beginnings. 13 games have been released in the sub-series, with still more to go, and I'm sure Falcom had no idea what journey they would be on since Trails in the Sky First Chapter's release in 2004, or when the English version released 7 years later. Now, as of the writing of this script, I have not finished Trails Beyond the Horizon. From what I know, it is very clearly not written as the end of the Calvert arc. There will be at least one game concluding Van & Company's adventures, and then it is on to the next bridge game like Sky the Third or Reverie, or the next arc. Here, though, is another point of interest for Falcom fans, and that is the looming prospect of the Trails sub-series coming to an end. There is no video game project like the Trails series, a game series with a decades-long development involving a continuous story covering some of the same characters, with integration and interaction between games and time progressing with each entry. The games cover a wide swath of the Zemirian continent, with new characters coming in each arc and returning characters growing and developing. There's not even another video game series I can point to that is anything close to what Trails is, and I think Falcom knows this. Trails in this respect is more like a book series, and even that is an imperfect comparison. I look to statements like Kondo's on how to end the series as a strong indication of how seriously they are viewing their duty as creators. I admire the effort this team has put into the series. I would love to be able to be part of creating something as expansive and beloved as Trails, but I also know I do not envy the position they are now in and the pressure they are under. Our media landscape is littered with disappointing conclusions of beloved series, so I think it makes complete sense that Kondo and the team are being very careful with how they are going to finish things up. The reason I bring this up here, though, is because these videos cover more of the business, future plans, and history of Nihon Falcom, and the coming close of the Trails series means huge things for the company. It is not imminent. My projection is that there is one more arc in the series left, that Nihon Falcom will likely wrap up the series during the 2030s. I also don't expect that they are done with the broader Legend of Heroes series. They may even keep making Trails games, either as remakes or spin-off/supplemental entries. But once the core series is done, whole new frontiers open up. It is important to consider this inevitability because I know they are making plans and decisions now on how they want to evolve in the post-Trails era, and I think that this may be the year some of those plans come into focus. What then does Falcom want to do in preparation for Trails concluding? I think the first thing they are looking at is diversifying their portfolio. Falcom has been the Ys and Trails company exclusively since Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus came out in 2016. No, I don't count the ports. And Tokyo Xanadu is the only non-Ys or Trails game released in the last 15 years. We've known since last year that they were developing a whole new IP to test out. This is uncharted territory for the company during the Kondo era as president. The last time the company made a solo-developed, entirely new IP game was 2004's Gurmen, which actually signaled the end of a different era for Falcom. The early 2000s for the company had lots of different projects as they tried to find their footing in the gaming landscape. They had new IPs with Zwei and Gurmen, as well as remakes of older projects such as Sorcerian and Dinosaur. It was also during this era that they revived the Ys series with Ys 6 and started the Trails sub-series after Cage Song of the Ocean closed out the Gagarv trilogy of The Legend of Heroes. In some ways, then, I see this period that Falcom is heading into as a similar era of experimentation and transition. We still don't know what that new IP is going to be, but I think that 2027 may be the year we find out because 2026 has some other plans in place. The culmination of the Let Kondo Cook plan has been revealed, as 2026 will be the first year with 2 games of this scale released by Falcom since 2009. The first release was recently announced in a partner Nintendo Direct in the form of Kyoto Xanadu, a sequel to Tokyo Xanadu that aims to reinvigorate the Xanadu series. Xanadu has been a series that Falcom has struggled to find a path forward for, but I think they may have found that path in Kyoto Xanadu by sticking to the setting and world of Tokyo Xanadu while deviating gameplay-wise back to some of the roots of the series. For comparison's sake, Kyoto Xanadu will be coming out 11 years after Tokyo Xanadu's initial release, which is an even longer gap than the one between Ys 5 Lost Kefin and Ys 6 The Ark of Napishtim, an 8-year gap. Ys 6 served as the reinvigoration for the Ys series after the dormancy, and I think Falcom are hoping that Kyoto Xanadu can serve in a similar way to making the Xanadu series a more regular series in the rotation. There's still plenty that we don't know about Kyoto Xanadu that I will get into later, but it is clear to me that with the end of Trails in sight, Falcom is trying to beef up its lineup, and Kyoto Xanadu is their effort to keep the Xanadu series around for the future. Don't worry, you'll hear more from me about Kyoto Xanadu as we get closer to the summer, and I'll save my other point about the release for later in the video, but suffice to say, I'm happy to see it and excited for what Falcom will bring. I think that is the first pillar that they are trying to build in the post-Trails era. The big 2026 release for Falcom, though, is their September release of Trails in the Sky Second Chapter, the remake of the 2006 original following the first game's remake last year. I say this is the big release because of the momentum behind the successful first remake and the now eager audience for the sequel. I honestly think this is a slam dunk release for Falcom. As long as they stick with the same design philosophy they used for Sky First Chapter and give attention and care to making it a polished release, they are golden. I will say they do need to make sure not to use limited run games again for the English Collector Edition, though considering I likely still won't have gotten my copy of the first game by the time Second Chapter comes out. The bigger issue is what Falcom does after Sky Second Chapter, as the company has publicly talked about whether the team would like to remake Sky the Third next or Trails from Zero. Putting that aside for a moment, I do believe that the wise move, and the one Falcom will choose in the short term, is to return to Calvard to finish out that arc before pursuing any additional Trails remakes. Sky Second Chapter comes to a satisfying enough conclusion that fans won't be clamoring for the next remake in the same way they would if they'd done more of a break between Sky First Chapter and Sky Second Chapter. Now, I'm gonna get into a little brief spoiler stuff, but Trails Beyond the Horizon ends on its own cliffhanger, and I think they're going to want to make sure that fans are not left hanging on the series continuing while they do all these remakes. At least, I hope they don't. After that, though, Nihon Falcom finds themselves with a choice on their hands when it comes to the remakes. To me, the choice is obvious. Sky the Third is a very good game with an important story to tell and sets up a lot of what comes later in the series that I'm sure Falcom wants to encourage people to play, given that the more invested people get in the series and the overall structure of it, the more games they can sell. And Sky the Third is that game that really expanded the series to beyond liberal. I've never bought the argument about the game being skippable, even if it is a non-traditional Trails game. Trails from Zero also is available on modern platforms in a way that Sky the Third isn't, and while that's not the only point of the remakes, it is an important benefit. Do I think that Falcom will make the same choice I would, though? I'm not sure, but I hope they do. A more recent bit of news that puts a new perspective on Nihon Falcom's future was the reveal that Falcom had a very successful first quarter of the fiscal year, October to December 2025. The company's revenue was up 150% and their operating profit was up 670%, likely due to the release of Trails in the Sky First Chapter during this time period. As the Kiseki Nut pointed out though, this was following up from a Kondo interview where he said that Sky First Chapter didn't meet sales expectations in Japan. Clearly abroad though, the game did very well, and this is backed up by the data saying that Falcom had a 218% year-on-year increase on licensing titles. The decline in Japanese sales of Falcom games has been a trend of the last 5 years or so, but the company has been steadied by the growing market outside of Japan. The world is starting to take notice of Nihon Falcom, not to the point that it will be competing with the big dogs, but definitely in a way that may spark changes in the company's long-time strategy. Or maybe they've already started these changes. For the vast majority of Nihon Falcom's history, markets outside of Japan have been afterthoughts. That started to change throughout the 2010s as more of Falcom's games received international releases and the company gradually built up an audience in China as well as in North America and Europe. It takes time though to respond to changes, and what I have seen since I started making these videos is a significant shift in Falcom's priorities. This video project began with the announcement of the long-awaited official localizations of the Crossbell games, Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure, along with Legend of Nyata and Trails into Reverie. At that time, localizing Crossbell was a huge step in a very specific effort to get all recent Falcom games localized, which was then going to help lead into the next step, closing the localization gap. As of the releases of Trails Beyond the Horizon and East 10 Proud Nordics, the last Nihon Falcom game that has not received a Western release is Vantage Masters Portable from 2008. That is the localizations done, but we could also be seeing the end of the localization gap itself. Sky Second Chapter, like Sky First Chapter, is a simultaneous worldwide release courtesy, at least in the West, of Gung Ho Entertainment. At the time of Sky First Chapter's release, it was unclear if this would be the expectation moving forward, or if it was a special case considering the games mostly used the same script as the original. That definitely made the localization process easier. Certainly allowing localization to happen before the game came out in Japan was already a huge step for Nihon Falcom that was made a couple years ago, but the real test to see if Nihon Falcom was committed to making this strategic shift to simultaneous worldwide releases would be the release of a new game. No remake, no prior script, something brand spanking new. Enter Kyoto Xanadu. And I will hold my horses for a moment here because there's still uncertainty around Kyoto Xanadu's release. We still have no idea who the localizers even will be for Kyoto Xanadu, although I will do some speculating later, and we haven't gotten confirmation that this is intended to be a global simultaneous release. But there are hopeful signs. First off, the game was revealed at a partnered Nintendo Direct. Sky First Chapter was also revealed at a Nintendo Direct. That reveal was for all Directs, not just the Japanese one, and received the same launch window across all of them. To me, that means that Kyoto Xanadu will likely be a simultaneous global release, and if that is truly the case, then Nihon Falcom has made a huge choice. They will have chosen to give equal priority to their global audience as to their Japanese one. It is a shift that makes sense given the way the sales numbers of their latest titles have trended, and it leads to speculation on what more Nihon Falcom has planned to retain and expand their audience. There's more that it means for that game specifically, but again, we will get into that when we have more information to get into. I've talked a lot about Trails and some about Xanadu thus far in this video, but I have barely touched on the other big Falcom series in Ys. Ys 10 Proud Nordics, the upgraded re-release of Ys 10, has now released in the West to praise for the expansion of the original game, while also getting critique for the price point, lack of clean upgrade path, or any upgrade path in some cases, for current Ys 10 owners, and the feeling that this is akin to the Atlas re-releases, but without even that much added content. I share these sentiments, which is why I have not gotten Ys 10 Proud Nordics and likely won't until it's significantly cheaper. Proud Nordics isn't the first expanded re-release Falcom has made, with Tokyo Xanadu and Ys 8 both receiving one previously. My hope is that Falcom reads the messages and understands from fans that this isn't the direction we want the games to go in. Even Atlas has talked about rethinking their strategy around games like Persona 5 Royal or Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. And I hope in the future Falcom gives their developers enough time to make a proper Ys game on the first go-through. What is of bigger concern to me about this release is that Ys 10 was supposed to spark a new era for Ys by introducing a new combat system and going back to younger adult. While it is a good game and enjoyable, I think Falcom was hoping for something bigger, which is one of the reasons they went back to the well before proceeding to the next entry. Overall, I don't think Falcom knows what to do with Ys right now. There's been talks of remakes to Ys 1 and 2, as well as the eternal looming question of an Ys 5 remake. Clearly, Ys is still a series Falcom wants to make, but the ideas for Ys games seem to be coming much slower than they are for Trails. My additional worry is that if Falcom pivots to remakes of Ys, just as they are remaking Trails games, that the amount of actual original games coming out of the company will slow to a halt. Do I know the answer when it comes to Ys? Not yet. We know we've got an Ys game in development, and I look forward to seeing exactly what that is and what that reveals about the plans for the series. Finally, before getting into the relationship between Falcom and their localization partners, plus a look at what I think Falcom will be developing over the next couple years, I want to talk about another hot button issue, that being AI. Back in October, Kondo spoke about the potential of AI translation being used to shorten the localization process. He did state that it would need to be overseen by humans, but this showed a willingness to use AI for game development. More signs of Falcom's openness to AI use came in the shareholders meeting in December, where it was mentioned as part of research, scenario brainstorming, as well as proofreading. I will be frank with my feelings on AI right off the bat. I have serious qualms with AI use due to its environmental costs, the strain it has put on the computer and electronics industry leading to rising costs, the propagation of misinformation via AI, and the ethical issues with the entire generative AI suite of tools. I want to support art created by humans. Falcom has been cautious in their statements around AI, but it is clear that they are using AI in some ways in their work. Where your personal line is drawn is important to consider, but it does put certain developments in perspective. Is Kyoto Xanadu potentially a simultaneous worldwide release because of an AI/machine translation? This is something that I have been concerned about since we saw the announcement. I hope not, as the human touch of the writing and localization was a key part of me getting into Trails when Xseed was in charge, and continued into those games localized by NIS America, Axis, and Gung Ho. Will Falcom stop with the current list of things they have used AI for, or will it take over more parts of the design process in the interest of speed? I don't have the answers, but this year will likely reveal more, and I can't say I like where things are heading right now, but I am taking a wait-and-see approach. I encourage you all to read and make up your own minds. Now, Falcom has never brought its own games to Western markets, and instead have used Localization Partners, 5 of whom are still relevant partners to this day. I want to talk a little about each of them, and also speculate which are the ones likely to take on Kyoto Xanadu, unless Falcom really did do it in-house, which almost certainly would require machine translation. The first is the partnership with NIS America. NIS America has been responsible for every Ys game localization post Ys 7 and every non-remake Trails since Trails of Cold Steel 2. They even did the Legend of Nayata spin-off game. This year they have already released Trails Beyond the Horizon and Ys 10 Proud Nordics, which means that we now have 0 confirmed Falcom localizations coming courtesy of NIS America. I don't think that's a sign of a bad relationship, just the reality that the West has finally caught up. I fully expect NIS America to localize the final Trails game in the Calvert arc, likely coming next year. It would be cool if this lull could allow a company like NISA to take on an older localization in Falcom's back catalog, but I see it as unlikely. Next is Xseed, which was a dead partnership for a few years after they lost the rights to NIS America for Ys and Trails. Last year, though, they helped out with the port of Ys Memoir The Oath in Felghana, and they will be doing the same for Ys Memoir Revelations in Celceta. I figure that Xseed will remain the default partner if Falcom keeps making these Ys ports, in which case the likely next one would be Ys 6 The Ark of Nepishtim, since Ys Origin already has a Switch port. It's not a common partnership and may end again for good once these ports are through, but it is nice to see Falcom and Xseed continuing to work together. Refint Games released the Falcom fighting game Ys vs. Trails in the Sky to worldwide audiences last year, and I certainly could see them partnering up again with older releases. It's hard to gauge though, since Refint is so new as a company and they're still trying to establish themselves in the localization scene. Falcom's willingness to work with them thus far, though, is a good sign of potential in the future. At this point, Gung Ho Entertainment is the only localization partner with a confirmed Falcom release upcoming in Trails in the Sky second chapter. I fully expect that Gung Ho will remain the partner for these remakes as long as Falcom wants to do them. Would Falcom consider also using them for other localizations such as Kyoto Xanadu? If they do, then that could seriously threaten NIS America's position as the go-to localization company for Falcom, but I think Falcom likes having multiple partners so that they don't burden one localization team so much that the games get delayed or have long localization waits. Now that the West is caught up with Japan, I think Falcom will be very careful to make sure we don't fall behind again. Lastly, we have Axis, whose one and only project with Nihon Falcom was Tokyo Xanadu, but that becomes very relevant this year with the release of the sequel. If I didn't say it at the time, I definitely thought it when Axis did the Switch port of Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus with the new localization, that release was their audition for the next Xanadu game. Time will tell if that audition was successful, but I would say that Axis is the most likely localization partner for Kyoto Xanadu, followed by NISA, then Gung Ho, then Xseed, and finally Refint. Axis's experience with Tokyo Xanadu definitely gives them a leg up in the race, and I think the reveal of who that partner is will be telling for how Falcom is dealing with localization going forward. Now let's look at the release schedule for Nihon Falcom. In 2026 thus far, we've had the English releases of Trails Beyond the Horizon and Ys 10 Proud Nordics. We also will be seeing the release of Ys Memoir Revelations in Celceta in the West. Then we have the possible simultaneous worldwide release of Kyoto Xanadu in the summer, and the definite simultaneous release of Trails in the Sky second chapter in the fall. We've got a lot on the table already, and unless an older title makes a surprise appearance, or the fan translation of Dinosaur Resurrection or The Legend of Heroes the White Witch come out, I think that what we see now is what we will get in 2026. For projects in development that haven't been revealed, we've got 2 ports, which I would speculate being Ys 6 and one of the various Trails releases, especially now that the Switch 2 is available. Then we have 1 new Trails project, which is in all likelihood Kai 2/Beyond the Horizon 2, an Ys project, which could be Ys 11 or a remake, and the completely new IP. If 2 of them are coming out in 2027, I think that Kai 2 has to be one of them, and then it's hard to say. My instinct is to lean towards the new IP because I've heard them hyping it up more than they have the next Ys release, but 2027 will be the 40th anniversary of Ys, and I think Falcom would love to release an Ys game for that anniversary. Whichever one of those doesn't get released in 2027 will almost certainly be the 2028 release, along with, I would guess, the Trails remake they choose between Sky the Third and Trails from Zero. What do y'all think of my speculations? Maybe someday I'll go back through these videos and see just how accurate my previous speculations ended up being. It might be a humbling experience, but hopefully it would be a fun one. I'll repeat what I said before. I believe that this is going to be a transitional period for Nihon Falcom as a company. There are plenty of things that are going well for the company, such as the success of Trails in the Sky remake and expansion of overseas audiences. However, for the company to continue to sustain the work they have done in the past, or even expand upon it, as Kondo has tried to do with the dual release this year, there are some questions to answer. Is Falcom going to take steps to be a truly global video game company? Will they hire more staff to help with the additional work, or use AI to try to expand without the need for more people? I don't know the answers, but I believe Falcom will find their answers, and then we as fans are going to need to decide if it is a direction we want to continue supporting. I, for one, am very excited for Trails in the Sky second chapter remake coming in the fall, and we'll also be getting into Kyoto Xanadu when that game comes out. I'm fascinated by Falcom pursuing a new IP and can't wait to see what that turns out to be. After that, though, I'm taking a wait-and-see approach. I suspect that next year around this time, a whole lot of things will be clearer about how Falcom wants to proceed moving forward. Thank you all for watching. I also want to extend my thanks to users like Hansuke, Bowl of Lentils, James Galizio, and the Kaseki Nut, because their work in analyzing and contextualizing the information coming out is invaluable to my work on these videos. We all take from each other. I stand on the shoulders of others and want to support those who support my work as well. Please check them out if you have the chance to. Let me know what you think of the video and Falcom's plans for 2026 and beyond. Like this video if you enjoyed and subscribe for all things Falcom and RPGs. I hope to see you all in the next video. Have a great day and happy gaming.